Leslie Wells, Connection Coach here. I help individuals find deeper, better connections in romantic relationships by looking at their attachment style. I'm going to do a two-part series here because I want to look at what to do once you start getting into this attachment theory stuff and once you start identifying your attachment style. And I want to look at it from two different perspectives. So the first perspective I want to look at is what happens when you recognize that you have an insecure attachment, whether you are leaning anxious or you're avoidant, you're a DA, an FA, or an AP. What do you do with this information? So now you see that you have behaviors that are not serving you, they're not serving your partner. What do you do with it? So I would say this, it is not enough that you recognize that you have these problems. You have to actually do something about it. Information is huge. It's a great starting point. It's absolutely amazing that you're taking this journey, but you can't stop there. Here's why. Studies were done by neuroscientists that showed us that individuals who are aware of these things but don't do anything about it actually gets worse. So the study specifically looked at individuals and how their mind, their thought world, their thoughts, how that affected the brain and the body. And so what they looked at was they looked at brain waves, they looked at things from a chemical perspective as far as homocysteine and cortisol, which we know create inflammation in the body and make us physically sick and chronic illnesses down the road. And they also looked at things from a cellular level and found that cellular stress, looking at telomeres, would cause premature biological aging. So the study was done by neuroscientists and it looked at how our thought processes and our thoughts affected the brain. So whenever you have thoughts, it will relay information to the brain, telling it what to do and telling it how to behave. That can mean the release of fight or flight chemicals. It can mean the release of cortisol. It can mean that you release dopamine and oxytocin if you have good positive thoughts. But your mind, your thought process will actually affect your brain and how it is structurally changes as time goes on in these continued thought patterns. So what the study found was that individuals who had negative thought patterns and were made aware of them got no better. So you would think that identifying these thought patterns and trying to be able to maneuver around them or reframe them would help, but in fact, it actually didn't. So if you are an anxious avoidant, or you are a dismissive avoidant, or an FA who leans anxious or avoidant, whatever your insecure attachment styles are, we know that we have negative thoughts and distorted perceptions that come with those attachment styles. We know that we already have core beliefs that feed us negative thoughts. They create images and perceptions that are not at all factual. A lot of times they're inaccurate. They're our own assumptions that are coming forward because of our attachment style. So we know already that we have negative thought patterns that we've got to get a grip on if we're going to show up better for ourselves and for our partners in relationships. So what we know from this study is that if we are aware of those thoughts and we're recognizing them, that's only a piece of the puzzle. So in this study, the individuals that were made aware of their negative thought patterns and were able to capture those and call those out, when they were not introduced tools, techniques, and ways to overcome and change their thoughts and ways to deal with these thoughts, they actually got significantly worse. So we saw this as far as they showed biological premature aging, spikes in cortisol and homocysteine and other chemicals that create inflammation in the body, which we know leads to long-term chronic issues, autoimmune-like symptoms, gut issues, heart issues, stroke, heart attack, skin stuff, all kinds of stuff. We know that it's bad for us. And they showed brainwave activity in parts of the brain where you would not want it to be high or low. That's really getting in depth, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So we know that individuals that are do not have the necessary tools actually get worse once the awareness comes. The other thing the study showed is that individuals who suppress their thoughts actually got significantly worse. And so we know that if you suppress your thoughts, if you suppress your feelings, if you avoid for too long, it's got to come out somewhere. That energy is not going to stay in one place. Energy has to move. And so it actually translates into biologically aging faster, and again, all of those chemicals that are released that cause more inflammation. So if you are getting into this stuff and you're learning about yourself, the next step for you, in order for you not to get worse but to get healthier, is to figure out what tools and techniques and strategies are going to work for you to change your thought pattern, change your behaviors, and change how you're showing up. How do you get to a place where you are dealing with those avoidant behaviors or you are dealing with those anxious behaviors? And so this is where coaching and therapy and counseling and all of that comes into place. So if you're starting to dig into this stuff, you're on the right step, but you can't stop yet.